The enduring enigma of the spirit, double. A cross-cultural and psychological exploration. Introduction. The ubiquitous double. The notion of a spirit double, an exact replica or apparition of a living person, is a pervasive and compelling theme in human culture and belief systems. This phenomenon, often referred to by the German term doppelgänger, literally meaning double-goer, initially signified a ghostly counterpart, frequently perceived as an omen, particularly of impending death. While contemporary usage sometimes dilutes this term to describe a mere physical look-alike, this paper will focus on the more profound paranormal, mythological, and psychological dimensions of a second self. The persistence of this concept across diverse cultures and historical epochs suggests it touches upon fundamental human concerns regarding identity, consciousness, and mortality. The term doppelgänger, for instance, has undergone a notable semantic evolution, originating from specific folkloric traditions where it denoted a spectral, often ominous entity. Its modern connotation has broadened, sometimes to the point of trivialization. This shift necessitates a clear, definitional stance in academic discourse. For the purposes of this research, spirit double and doppelganger will refer to the paranormal or psychological concept of a second self, distinct from coincidental physical resemblance. This paper will embark on a comprehensive exploration of the spirit double, traversing a wide array of cultural and intellectual landscapes. We'll begin by examining ancient conceptions, such as the Egyptian Ka and Ba, and then delve into various folkloric manifestations, including the German Doppelgänger, the Yoruba Ori Inu, the Greek Eidolon, the Japanese Ikirio, the Russian Dvoinik, and the Norse Vardagur. Each of these will be analyzed for its origins, defining characteristics, and cultural significance. Subsequently, the paper will bridge these traditional understandings with modern scientific and psychological inquiries. This includes an examination of autoscopic phenomena like tautoscopy, an exploration of the psychological impact of encountering a perceived double, and a review of the controversies and theoretical frameworks developed to explain these experiences. The ultimate aim is to provide a holistic understanding of the spirit double phenomenon, highlighting its cultural tenacity and its continued relevance to contemporary studies of consciousness, selfhood, and the human psyche. The enduring human fascination with the idea of a second self, a shadow, an alter ego, or a spiritual counterpart, is evidenced by its recurrent appearance in myths, legends, artistic expressions, and literary works across myriad cultures and throughout history. This widespread and timeless captivation suggests that the concept of the double is not merely a collection of quaint folkloric tales, but rather points to a deep-seated psychological or existential inquiry concerning the nature of identity, the finality of death, and the very essence of the self. The near universality of the double motif appearing in such diverse cultural contexts as ancient Egypt and pre-Christian Norse societies, as well as in Japanese and Yoruba traditions, invites rigorous comparative analysis. Such widespread presence implies that the concept may not be an isolated cultural artifact, but rather may tap into fundamental aspects of human experience or cognitive structuring, raising compelling questions about shared psychological drivers or common human experiences that might universally give rise to such beliefs. Ancient roots and mythological manifestations of the spirit double. The concept of a spirit double is not a recent invention, but is deeply embedded in the foundational beliefs of ancient civilizations. These early conceptions often intricately linked the double to notions of the soul, life force, destiny, and the afterlife, providing frameworks for understanding the self beyond its mere physical confines. The Egyptian Ka and Ba, soul components as spiritual counterparts. Ancient Egyptian civilization possessed one of the most elaborate and enduring systems of belief concerning the soul and its various components, among which the Ka and Ba stand out as distinct spiritual counterparts to the living individual. The Ka was conceptualized as a double form, or astral self, representing the essential life force, inherent personality, and spiritual duplicate of a person, created at the moment of their birth. Far from being a mere abstraction, the Ka was believed to require tangible sustenance, primarily through food and drink offerings, to persist in the afterlife. This necessity underscored the critical importance of mummification and the securement of tombs, as the Ka needed to recognize and inhabit the preserved body of the deceased. The concept of the Ka was not limited to humans. It was believed that all living entities, including animals and plants, possessed a Ka, signifying its role as a universal vital principle. The Ka's existence was considered integral to the individual's eternal journey and their continued interaction with the world of the living from the afterlife. In a compelling mythological narrative, The Greek Princess, which offers an Egyptian perspective on the Trojan War, a K of Helen of Troy was purportedly used to deceive Paris, thereby helping to end the conflict. This tale vividly illustrates the perceived tangibility and duplicative nature of the Ka, capable of independent action and physical manifestation. Ka thus represents one of the earliest and most sophisticated conceptions of a spirit double, intrinsically tied to life, death, and the complex Egyptian understanding of the afterlife, emphasizing the idea of a vital, coexisting self that required continued nourishment and recognition. The Ba, often translated simplistically as soul, was another crucial spiritual aspect, depicted iconographically as a human-headed bird. This form symbolized its inherent mobility, as the Ba was believed to be capable of swift movement between the earthly realm and the various domains of the afterlife, including the Duat, underworld, and the heavens. Each Ba was uniquely linked to an individual and was thought to hover over the corpse after death. However, unlike the more body-bound Ka, the Ba could also travel to visit the gods, interact with other spirits, or revisit cherished places from its earthly life. Critical function of the Ba was its nightly reunion with the Ka, a process believed to be essential for providing sustenance and spiritual power to the Ka, thereby ensuring its survival. Initially, during the Old Kingdom, the possession of a Ba was thought to be an exclusive prerogative of the king and gods, but this belief democratized over time, extending to all individuals by the New Kingdom. The Ba, therefore, illustrates the dynamic and interactive aspect of the spiritual double, facilitating communication and movement between worlds and playing an indispensable role in the sustenance of the Ka. While not a direct double in the same vein as the Ka, the Ak represents the ultimate transfigured state of the deceased. Described as a magical union of the Ba and Ka, the Ak was the immortal, enlightened, and effective spirit that came into being after a virtuous life and successful judgment in the afterlife. The creation of the Ak was contingent upon the proper preservation of the body and the continued existence and nourishment of the Ka and Ba. The Ak was considered an enlightened spirit, enduring and unchanged for eternity, capable of mingling with the gods and even influencing events in the world of the living. Its inclusion is vital for a comprehensive understanding of the Egyptian soul complex, as it signifies the ultimate destiny and potential of the spiritual components, including the Ka as the life double. The intricate relationship between the Ka, Ba, and Ak demonstrates a sophisticated model of the self, comprising multiple spiritual facets essential for navigating life, death, and eternity. The German Doppelgänger, the double-goer. The term doppelganger, derived from German and literally meaning double-goer, refers to a wraith or apparition of a living person, a concept deeply rooted in Germanic folklore. It is crucially distinguished from a ghost, as a doppelganger is the double of an individual who is still alive. This spectral twin is often described as an exact replica of the person it shadows, though with eerie distinctions such as lacking a shadow or reflection, a characteristic shared with vampires in some traditions. The doppelganger can manifest either as a ghostly, insubstantial figure or appear as if in the flesh. Culturally, the doppelganger is predominantly portrayed as a malevolent entity, an evil twin. It is often believed that these doubles might attempt to offer advice to the person they shadow, but this counsel is typically misleading or actively malicious. Furthermore, they are sometimes thought to plant sinister ideas in their victim's mind or cause profound confusion. Consequently, folklore strongly advised against any form of communication with one's own doppelganger. The appearance of a doppelganger is almost universally regarded as a dire omen. It is commonly held to signify impending misfortune, serious illness, or, most ominously, the imminent death of the person whose double is seen, particularly if one encounters their own doppelganger. This belief has cemented the doppelganger as arguably the most archetypal and unsettling spirit double in Western culture, heavily influencing literature, art, and popular imagination. With its predominantly sinister connotations and its association with mortality and the darker aspects of the self. The Yoruba Ori Inu, the inner head. In Yoruba cosmology and spiritual belief, the concept of Ori Inu offers a distinct perspective on the spiritual counterpart, emphasizing an internal rather than an external double. Ori Inu translates from Yoruba as inner head or inner consciousness. It is considered the spiritual essence residing within each individual, the very seat of divine wisdom, intuition, and, crucially, personal destiny, Ayanmo. This inner essence is believed to be bestowed upon each soul by Olodumare, the Supreme Being, prior to birth, making it a sacred and fundamental component of one's being. The Ori Inu is differentiated from the physical head, known as Ori Ode, external head, and symbolizes the individual's true essential nature. The role of Ori Inu in shaping an individual's life path is paramount. It is believed that each person's destiny is intricately interwoven with their Ori Inu, which holds the blueprint for their life's purpose and the lessons they are meant to learn. Spiritual practices within the Yoruba tradition, including divination, such as Ifa, often aim to help individuals understand and align themselves with the guidance of their Ori Inu. Such alignment is considered essential for navigating life's challenges successfully, making choices that are in harmony with one's divine destiny, and ultimately achieving spiritual fulfillment and realizing one's highest potential. Unlike many other spirit double concepts that describe an external, often visible apparition, the Ori Inu is primarily understood as an internal spiritual component. It is the guiding force, the source of personal power and wisdom, and the conduit for divine communication, connecting the individual to their higher self, ancestors, and the Orisa deities. The Yoruba concept emphasizes a fusion of body, mind, and spirit, with the Ori Inu representing an integrated spiritual consciousness rather than a separate, externalized double. This internal locus provides a contrasting philosophical approach to the notion of a second self, one that is integral, inherent, and guiding, rather than separate, projected, and potentially antagonistic or ominous. The Greek eidolon, the image or phantom. In the rich literary and mythological traditions of ancient Greece, the eidolon emerges as a significant concept representing a spirit image, shade, or phantom lookalike of either a living or a deceased person. The term itself translates broadly as image, idol, double, apparition, phantom, or ghost, signifying an image copy of a real being. Dola were understood to possess the shape and appearance of the original individual, but critically lack their physical substance, existing as ethereal likenesses. The characteristics and purposes of idola were varied. They could manifest as copies of living individuals, sometimes created by the gods for specific purposes. A notable example from Homer's Iliad is the eidolon of Aeneas, fashioned by Apollo and Ares to fight in his stead, while the real Aeneas was whisked away from battle. Perhaps more famously, Euripides, in his play, Helen explored the idea that an eidolon of Helen of Troy, not the real Helen, was taken to Troy, thus rendering the entire Trojan War a tragic conflict fought over a mere phantom. This literary device served to question the nature of reality and the motivations behind conflict. Idola also commonly represented apparitions of the dead. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus encounters numerous idola in the underworld. In the Iliad, the eidolon of the slain Patroclus appears to Achilles, urging him to perform the necessary burial rites so that Patroclus's spirit can find rest in Hades. Such idola of the dead often served to offer counsel, convey messages from the afterlife, or remind the living of their duties. However, not all idola were benign or advisory. Some, like the eidolon of Clytemnestra in Aeschylus's Eumenides, appeared to seek vengeance, inciting the Furies against her son Orestes. The cultural significance of the eidolon in ancient Greece was profound. It was a vital concept in literature and philosophy, used to explore complex themes such as kleos, glory and renown, the nature of life after death, the distinction between appearance and reality, and the mechanics of divine intervention. The eidolon highlights the ancient Greek understanding of a likeness or image that could possess a form of agency, represent the deceased in the world of the living, or even substitute for a living person, thereby playing crucial roles in narrative development and philosophical inquiry into identity, perception, and the boundaries of the human condition. The Japanese Ikiryo, the living ghost. Japanese folklore presents a unique and compelling form of the spirit double known as the Ikiryo, Shengling, which translates to living ghost or living spirit. An Ikiryo is essentially the soul of a person who is still alive, but has temporarily detached from their physical body and can move about and interact with the world independently. These apparitions typically appear in the same form as the living individual from whom they originate, although they may sometimes present as translucent or ghostly. The manifestation of an Ikirio is often linked to states of heightened emotion or critical physical conditions. Common triggers include near-death experiences, fainting spells, or most notably, intense feelings of passion, desire, love, or hatred. An Ikirio can also arise as a result of profound trauma, or be intentionally dispatched as part of a curse, such as through the ritual known as Ushi no Kokumairi, pilgrimage of the hour of the ox. A striking aspect of Ikirio phenomena is that the individual whose soul has separated is frequently unaware of their double's existence or activities, which can lead to perplexing and disturbing situations. The significance of the Ikirio in Japanese belief is multifaceted. When born of intense negative emotions like rage or jealousy, an Ikirio can torment, harass, or even cause physical illness or death to the object of these feelings. Conversely, Ikirio are also said to appear to loved ones shortly before or after the individual's death, often as a final farewell, particularly in the context of soldiers dying far from home. During the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, the concept of Ikirio was integrated into medical understanding, with phenomena like detached soul syndrome, Rikonbayo, and shadow illness, Kage no Yama, being terms used to describe conditions akin to sleepwalking or out-of-body experiences, where the individual's consciousness might accompany the errant soul. The Ikirio uniquely emphasizes the potent capacity of a living person's raw emotional state or vital spirit to project a double, often with tangible and frequently detrimental consequences for others, or as a poignant pre-mortem apparition. This directly forges a link between intense psychological states and the manifestation of a spirit double. The Russian Dvoinik, the impersonating apparition. Russian folklore is a vast repository of pre-Christian pagan beliefs, featuring a complex pantheon of deities, nature spirits, and concepts of ancestor worship and animism. The historical phenomenon of dvoevere, or dual faith, attests to the persistent blending of these ancient Slavic pagan traditions with Orthodox Christianity following its adoption. Within this rich folkloric landscape, magic tales known as volshebnaye skazki frequently incorporate a variety of supernatural beings, including spirits and enchanted entities. While the broader Russian folkloric tradition includes various types of spirits, such as the Vodyanoi, a water spirit known for its shape-shifting abilities and often malevolent tendencies, specific academic or traditional accounts detailing the Dvoinik as a spirit double are less prominent in the provided general folklore research than its literary portrayals. The term Dvoinik itself translates from Russian and other Slavic languages as double or twin, inherently suggesting a connection to the concept of duplication. Vivid characterization of the Dvoinik is found in David Demchuk's novel, The Bone Mother, a work that draws upon Eastern European myth and folklore. In this literary context, the Dvoinik is described as an apparition that impersonates its victim and draws him into a web of evil in order to free itself. This depiction, set within a collection of tales from creatures of Eastern European myth, portrays the Dvoinik as a malevolent and deceptive entity. Its modus operandi involves impersonation with the sinister aim of ensnaring its target, and its motivation to free itself hints at a parasitic nature or a state of being bound or cursed, seeking release through the corruption or destruction of another. This literary interpretation aligns the Dvoinik with the more ominous and threatening archetypes of spirit doubles found in other cultures, emphasizing themes of deception, malevolence, and existential threat. Further specialized folkloric research would be necessary to fully delineate the traditional roots of the dvojnik in Russian peasant belief versus its elaborations in literary fiction, though the core concept of a double is clearly present. The Norse Vardöger, the spirit predecessor, Norse and broader Scandinavian folklore feature a unique type of spirit double known as the Vardöger, also spelled Vardevol or Vardiger. The term Vardöger is a Norwegian word that signifies a premonitory sound or sight of a person before he arrives, essentially a harbinger. Its etymology traces back to the Old Norse Vardigi, a compound of Vorder, meaning warden, watcher, caretaker, and Huger, meaning mind, soul, or thought. This linguistic origin already suggests a connection to a protective or essential spiritual aspect of a person. Similar concepts exist in other Nordic cultures, such as the Swedish Vord, also derived from Vorder, and the Finnish Etiainen, firstcomer. The defining characteristic of a Vardöger is its manifestation before the physical arrival of the person it mirrors. Witnesses might hear the person's characteristic footsteps, their voice, detect their scent, or even see their apparition engaged in activities that the actual person will perform shortly thereafter. This phenomenon is often described as being akin to déjà vu, but in reverse, an experience of something before it happens, attributed to the preceding spirit double. Crucially, the Vardöger is generally distinguished from the more sinister German Doppelgänger. It typically carries a less ominous or even neutral connotation. Rather than being an evil twin or a portent of doom, the Vardöger is more akin to a phantom double form of bilocation, or an echo from the future. Its appearance is not necessarily a sign of impending misfortune, but rather a premonitory signal of the person's approach. Furthermore, the Vardöger has strong connections to the concept of a guardian spirit. Originally, it was considered a type of fylgja, a tutelary spirit, often taking animal form, that accompanied an individual and reflected their nature and destiny, or a vorder. A warden spirit believed to follow a person's soul from birth to death, offering protection. This association imbues the Vardöger with a potentially protective or guiding quality, representing an individual's inner essence or spiritual guardian manifesting ahead of them. The Vardöger, therefore, offers a distinct perspective on the spirit double, emphasizing precognitive manifestation and a spiritual echo rather than inherent malevolence, highlighting the diverse ways cultures have conceptualized the phenomenon of a second self. The varied nature of these spirit doubles, from the vital and sustaining Egyptian Ka to the guiding Yoruba Ori Inu, the premonitory Norse Vardöger, and the more menacing German Doppelgänger or Japanese Ikirio, born of rage, indicates that these entities exist on a broad spectrum of perceived benevolence and malevolence. This range likely reflects underlying cultural anxieties, philosophical outlooks on the self, prevailing moral codes, and beliefs about the afterlife or spiritual realms. For instance, cultures that place a strong emphasis on internal spiritual guidance and destiny might develop concepts like the Ori Inu, which is an intrinsic part of the self. Conversely, cultures with more pronounced fears of external spiritual interference or the hidden, darker aspects of human nature might give rise to folklore emphasizing malevolent or dangerous doubles. Many of these spirit double concepts are intrinsically linked to the individual's life force, soul, or consciousness. The Egyptian Ka is explicitly defined as a vital source, and the Ba as a component of the soul. The Japanese Ikiryo is described as the souls of still living people which have temporarily left their bodies, and the Norse Vardoger is connected to the Huger, meaning soul or mind. This persistent connection across disparate cultures suggests a common human intuition or philosophical inclination that consciousness or a vital essence can, under certain circumstances, be perceived as distinct from or capable of existing parallel to the physical body. This notion underscores a fundamental human questioning of the nature of being and the boundaries of the self. Furthermore, the manifestation of certain doubles is explicitly tied to intense emotional states or critical transitional periods, such as life-threatening situations or the moments surrounding death. The Japanese Ikiryo, for example, is frequently triggered by intense passion or desire, intense hatred. Similarly, the German Doppelgänger is often seen as an omen of imminent death or appears during times of crisis. This pattern, observed in folklore, intriguingly prefigures modern psychological theories that associate autoscopic phenomena, experiences of seeing one's own body from an external perspective, with conditions of extreme stress, trauma, and altered states of consciousness. It suggests an early intuitive grasp of the profound connection between an individual's psychological state and the potential for anomalous perceptual experiences. A significant distinction also emerges in how these doubles are conceptualized in relation to the self. Some are primarily internal spiritual components, while others are external, often visible manifestations. The Yoruba Ori Inu, the inner head or inner essence, exemplifies an internal spiritual core that guides destiny. In contrast, the German Doppelgänger as a wraith or apparition, the Greek eidolon as a spirit image, and the Japanese Ikiryo, which can appear just as the living person, to all represent externally perceived doubles. This divergence in the locus of the double, internal versus external, may reflect varying cultural emphases on introspection versus the influence of external spiritual forces, or it could indicate different philosophical approaches to defining the boundaries and constitution of the self. Comparative analysis of folkloric spirit doubles. A comparative examination of spirit double traditions from around the world reveals both striking commonalities and significant divergences, reflecting a universal human preoccupation with the nature of self, yet colored by distinct cultural lenses. These folkloric constructs serve not only as explanations for anomalous experiences, but also as rich repositories of cultural values, anxieties, and philosophical outlooks. Common themes permeate many of these traditions. The most pervasive is the double as an omen, frequently heralding death or misfortune. This is particularly true for the German Doppelgänger and can be an aspect of the Greek eidolon, although eidola could also be neutral or offer guidance. The Norse Vardoger, while premonitory, is notably less sinister in its forewarning. In contrast, the Egyptian Ka and Ba are not omens of impending doom, but are integral components for the journey into and existence within the afterlife. The theme of duality is, by definition, central to all spirit double concepts, implying a multifaceted self composed of a physical being and a spiritual or ethereal counterpart. This is explicitly mirrored in broader cosmological views, such as the dualistic twin concepts in Zoroastrianism and certain Native American Hopi beliefs concerning the upper and underworlds. Furthermore, many doubles are deeply connected to the soul or life force of the individual, viewed not as alien entities, but as manifestations of the person's own spirit or vital essence, as seen with the Ka, Ba, Ikirio, and Vardoger. Finally, some doubles are attributed with the capacity to offer guidance or advice, though this can range from helpful counsel, like the Idola of Patroclus or Darius, to deliberately malicious or misleading advice, as often ascribed to the doppelganger. Despite these common threads, key differences in cultural interpretations are profound. The spectrum of benevolence versus malevolence is a primary differentiator, as highlighted previously. The origin or perceived cause of the double also varies significantly. Some are inherent integral parts of the soul complex from birth, Ka, Ba, or Inu. Others are projected by intense emotions or psychic states, Ikirio. Some appear as omens tied to external events or fate, Doppelgänger, Vardoger, and still others are understood as divine creations or interventions, the Eidolon of Helen. The tangibility and mode of interaction also differ. Some doubles are primarily ghostly and non-interactive, or manifest only subtly through sounds or scents, like the Vardoger, while others are perceived as more tangible, capable of direct interaction or even causing physical harm or profound psychological distress, as with certain Ikirio, the literary Dvoinik, or the mythological Ka of Helen influencing events. These beliefs in spirit doubles play a crucial role in shaping cultural narratives and belief systems. They provide established frameworks for interpreting and making sense of anomalous perceptual experiences, the mysteries of death and the afterlife, and the complex nature of the self. Often, these folkloric figures serve important moral or cautionary functions within their respective societies. For example, by warning against behaviors that might attract a malevolent double, or by emphasizing the importance of specific rituals for the well-being of the soul's components after death. Moreover, these traditions have profoundly enriched literary and artistic expressions across cultures, providing potent symbols for exploring enduring themes of identity, morality, free will versus fate, and the nature of the supernatural. The characteristics attributed to these doubles are rarely arbitrary. Rather, they appear to be culturally constructed to embody and address specific societal concerns, anxieties, and philosophical perspectives. For instance, the Egyptian focus on the Ka and Ba, requiring protection and sustenance for a positive afterlife, mirrors a societal preoccupation with elaborate funerary rites and the promise of eternal life. The German Doppelgänger, often an evil twin heralding death, could reflect anxieties about the hidden negative aspects of the self or the seemingly uncontrollable nature of fate, particularly within a cultural milieu rich in dark romanticism and folklore. Similarly, the Japanese Ikirio, frequently born of intense, often negative emotions, highlights a cultural awareness of the powerful, sometimes destructive potential of human feelings. The spirit double motif, across its various cultural instantiations, often serves as an explanatory framework for a range of phenomena that would otherwise be inexplicable within traditional knowledge systems. Premonitions might be attributed to a Vardoger. Sudden, unaccountable illnesses or misfortunes could be the work of a malevolent doppelganger. Intense psychological experiences or the perceived separation of consciousness from the physical body might be understood through concepts like the Ikirio or the Ka. The very question, So where did belief in spirit doubles come from? And is there any real truth to them? The comma often juxtaposes folkloric explanations with early scientific or philosophical ponderings, implying that these beliefs arose, at least in part, to provide narratives for experiences that defied easy categorization. In this sense, the belief in spirit doubles can be viewed as an early form of theorizing about the mind, consciousness, and causality, filling explanatory voids that modern science now attempts to address through different empirical and theoretical models. At its core, the existence of a double, whether perceived as benevolent or malevolent, inherently challenges the notion of a singular, unique, and indivisible self. This paradox of identity is a central and recurring theme. If there is another you, an entity that shares your appearance, memories, or essence, what does that imply for your own individuality, agency, and uniqueness? The doppelganger, for example, might attempt to plant sinister ideas in its victim's mind, suggesting a struggle for control over one's thoughts and actions. The literary Dvoinik impersonates its victim, Five, aiming to usurp their life. Even the more benign Egyptian Ka is explicitly a double form. This recurring theme of duplication forces a confrontation with the fundamental concept of selfhood. Thus, the spirit double motif serves as a rich cultural arena for exploring complex philosophical questions about identity, uniqueness, and the very boundaries of the self. Questions that continue to be debated in contemporary psychology, philosophy, and neuroscience. Scientific and psychological inquiries into the phenomenon of the double. While folklore and mythology offer rich narratives of spirit doubles, contemporary scientific and psychological disciplines have sought to understand the experiential basis of such phenomena through empirical investigation and theoretical modeling. These inquiries often focus on autoscopic phenomena, their neurological underpinnings, and related psychological syndromes, providing alternative frameworks for interpreting experiences of seeing or sensing a double. Autoscopic phenomena. Seeing oneself. Autoscopy, derived from the Greek autos, self, and skopos, watcher, broadly refers to the experience of perceiving one's own body or a duplicate of oneself in external space, often from a vantage point that seems to be outside one's physical body. These experiences are generally considered to be complex hallucinations with a neurological basis, rather than perceptions of objectively existing external entities. Neurological research has identified several distinct types of autoscopic experiences, each with unique phenomenological characteristics. Autoscopic hallucination. This involves a purely visual experience of seeing one's own body, or sometimes just the upper parts or face, as if reflected in a mirror. The perceived image is often an exact mirror image, and the individual experiencing it does not feel that their consciousness or point of view is located within this illusory body. Depersonalization symptoms are typically absent. These hallucinations are often brief, lasting only seconds or minutes, though they may recur. Neurologically, some evidence suggests the involvement of the right parieto-occipital cortex in this type of autoscopy. Autoscopic proper. This is perhaps the autoscopic phenomenon most closely aligned with the classic folkloric doppelganger experience. It involves seeing a double of oneself, which may appear colorless, foggy, pale, transparent, or ghost-like. The double in autoscopy can behave autonomously and may or may not precisely mirror the person's appearance or movements. Importantly, its sidedness, left and right, is usually correctly oriented, unlike a mirror image. The experience often involves not just visual, but also somatosensory, bodily feeling, and vestibular, balance and spatial orientation sensations, such as feelings of detachment, bodily lightness, or vertigo. Individuals may report a sense of bilocation, feeling as if they are present in both their physical body and the location of the double, or that their mind is within the doppelganger, especially in cases of hodoscopic echopraxia, where the double imitates the person's movements. However, the core sense of self or ego typically remains anchored within the physical body. Heautoscopy is frequently associated with neurological conditions, particularly partial epilepsy originating in the parietal and temporal lobes, with the left temporoparietal junction often implicated. Feeling of a presence. This experience is characterized by a distinct and often vivid sensation that another person or being is physically present in the immediate extracorporeal space, yet without any corresponding visual impression. The presence is frequently felt to be just at the fringe of vision. Like heautoscopy, it is often accompanied by alterations in the individual's experience of their own body, and can be reported by healthy individuals under conditions of extreme sensory deprivation or social isolation. When associated with a seizure disorder, the felt presence is often confined to one side of space, hemispace. Out-of-body experience. In an OBE, the individual experiences their center of awareness or self as being located outside of their physical body, from which they typically perceive their own body and the surrounding environment. The core of this experience is the perceived separation of the experiencing self from the physical body, often from a detached and elevated spatial perspective. The physical body is usually observed as motionless. OBEs can be accompanied by strong emotional responses, often positive feelings of peace, euphoria, except in cases where the experience is a precursor to an epileptic seizure. Neurologically, OBEs are thought to be generated in the right hemisphere, particularly involving the right temporoparietal junction. While OBEs are a form of autoscopy, literally seeing self, they are phenomenologically distinct from seeing a coexisting doppelganger in the same space. Negative heautoscopy. This refers to the unusual experience of failing to perceive one's own body, either when looking directly at it or, more commonly, when looking in a mirror where a reflection would be expected. This experience is often accompanied by feelings of depersonalization or aschematia, a loss of awareness of one's own body or its parts. In some cases, negative heautoscopy can be unilateral, affecting the perception of only one half of the body. There is some suggestion in the literature of involvement of the splenium of the corpus callosum. Inner autoscopy, internal heautoscopy. This is a rare form of autoscopic experience characterized by the visual hallucination of one's own internal organs as if they were located outside the body in extracorporeal space. Understanding these distinct classifications is crucial for a nuanced analysis of spirit double phenomena. It allows for differentiation between various subjective experiences of seeing a double, which may arise from different underlying neurological mechanisms and possess distinct subjective qualities. Heautoscopy, in particular, shares many phenomenological features with the traditional accounts of encountering a doppelganger. Neurological correlates. Research into autoscopic phenomena has identified several key neurological correlates. The temporoparietal junction, TPJ, an area where the temporal and parietal lobes meet, has emerged as a critical brain region in the generation of these experiences. Dysfunction or atypical activity in the TPJ is implicated in autoscopy, out-of-body experiences, and other forms of autoscopy. It is believed that the TPJ plays a crucial role in integrating multisensory information, visual, tactile, proprioceptive, vestibular, to create a coherent sense of one's body and its location in space. Disruption of these processes can lead to a functional disintegration of lower-level multisensory processing and abnormal higher-level self-processing, resulting in the various forms of autoscopic experiences. Specifically, the right TPJ is frequently associated with OBEs, while the left TPJ is more commonly linked to autoscopy too, although some case studies of autoscopy have reported right parietal epileptic foci, suggesting a more complex lateralization. Epilepsy is one of the most frequently cited neurological conditions associated with autoscopy. A significant proportion of reported cases of autoscopic phenomena occur in individuals with epilepsy, particularly seizures originating in the temporal and parietal lobes. For instance, one documented case involved a man who experienced visions of 5 doubles, an experience attributed to a tumor located in the insular region of his left temporal lobe. Beyond epilepsy, a range of other neurological and psychiatric conditions can trigger or be associated with autoscopic experiences. These include brain lesions, e.g. from stroke or tumor, traumatic brain injury, migraine, as well as psychiatric conditions such as schizophrenia, delirium, depression, and psychosis. Furthermore, states of overwhelming fear, severe anxiety, intoxication, e.g. with certain drugs, and transitions between sleep and wakefulness, hypnagogic or hypnopompic states, have also been reported as contexts for such experiences. The identification of these neurological correlates provides a crucial biological basis for understanding these often unsettling and extraordinary experiences, thereby moving their interpretation from the purely supernatural or folkloric realm into the domain of neuropsychiatric phenomena. This scientific perspective allows for the possibility that some historical or folkloric accounts of spirit doubles may, in fact, be culturally interpreted descriptions of neurologically triggered autoscopic events. Psychological syndromes and experiences. In addition to transient autoscopic hallucinations, the concept of a double also manifests in more persistent psychological syndromes and experiences. The syndrome of subjective doubles is a rare delusional misidentification syndrome. Individuals with this condition hold an unwavering delusional belief that they have one or more doubles share their physical appearance, but typically possess different character traits and lead independent lives. Unlike a fleeting hallucination, this is a fixed belief. The patient insists on the reality of their doubles even when confronted with contradictory evidence and often experiences associated paranoia. This syndrome is commonly comorbid with other severe psychiatric illnesses, such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. It differs from autoscopic hallucinations primarily in its delusional nature and persistence. Autoscopy is a perceptual experience, often transient, whereas the syndrome of subjective doubles is a disorder of belief content. This syndrome underscores how the double concept can manifest not just as a perceptual anomaly, but also as a core feature of a delusional system, reflecting a profound disturbance in self-concept and reality testing. Dissociative experiences are also relevant to the understanding of phenomena related to doubles. Dissociation involves a disconnection or separation between various aspects of mental functioning that are normally integrated, such as thoughts, memories, emotions, identity, and perception of the environment. Out-of-body experiences, OBEs, are widely considered to be a form of dissociative experience. The characteristic feeling of detachment from one's physical body and observing oneself from an external perspective, central to OBEs, is a hallmark of dissociation. Out-of-body experiences, OBEs, as detailed previously under autoscopic phenomena, involve perceiving the world and one's own body from a location outside the physical body. These experiences can be triggered by a variety of factors, including traumatic brain injuries, sensory deprivation, near-death experiences, dissociative and psychedelic drugs, dehydration, sleep disorders like sleep paralysis or lucid dreams, and direct electrical stimulation of the brain. It is estimated that as many as 1 in 10 people may have an OBE at some point in their lives. While OBEs involve seeing the self from an external viewpoint, they are phenomenologically distinct from the experience of seeing a doppelganger coexisting in the same shared space. However, both types of experience fundamentally challenge the conventional unified sense of an embodied self, prompting questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the physical body. The scientific and psychological investigation into these phenomena reveals that the experience of seeing a double or seeing oneself is not a monolithic event. Instead, it encompasses a spectrum of experiences ranging from transient autoscopic hallucinations and out-of-body experiences to more enduring delusional syndromes. These experiences vary considerably in their perceptual qualities, the individual's sense of self-localization, and the degree of insight they retain into the unreality of the phenomenon. This diversity suggests that a single one-size-fits-all explanation for all spirit double experiences is unlikely to be adequate. Different underlying mechanisms, such as failures in multisensory integration at the temporoparietal junction, disruptions in neurotransmitter systems, or complex delusional thought processes, likely account for the different types of experiences reported. The identification of neurological correlates for many of these phenomena, particularly involving the temporoparietal junction and conditions like epilepsy or brain lesions, provides a compelling scientific counterpoint to purely supernatural or folkloric explanations. This suggests that at least some traditional accounts encountering spirit doubles might be culturally elaborated interpretations of neurologically triggered autoscopic events. However, this does not necessarily negate the cultural shaping of these interpretations or the profound meaning such experiences can hold for individuals. Underlying many of these phenomena, whether autoscopic hallucinations, BEs, or delusional beliefs in a double, is a fundamental disruption in the brain's normal processes of self-perception, body ownership, the feeling that one's body belongs to oneself, and spatial awareness. OBEs, for instance, involve a radical shift in the perceived location of the self relative to the body. Negative autoscopy entails a loss of awareness or perception of one's own body. The syndrome of subjective doubles is rooted in a delusion about one's own identity being duplicated and existing independently. The temporoparietal junction, a brain region frequently implicated in these experiences, is known to be crucial for self-other distinction, agency, and the integration of bodily signals into a coherent sense of self. Therefore, these anomalous experiences, while often pathological or distressing, offer valuable insights into how the brain ordinarily constructs and maintains our sense of self, embodiment, and personal identity. Studying them can illuminate the complex, often taken for granted, neurocognitive processes that underpin everyday self-awareness. The psychological impact of encountering a double. The experience of encountering what is perceived as a double or doppelganger, whether interpreted through a folkloric, psychological, or neurological lens, can have profound and often distressing psychological impacts on an individual. These effects span emotional responses, shifts in self-perception and identity, and can be linked to periods of significant stress or life transition. Emotional responses. Encounters with doppelgangers are frequently characterized by intense emotional reactions, predominantly fear, terror, and a deep sense of unease. This is not merely the fear of a ghostly apparition, but is often amplified by the uncanny nature of seeing oneself replicated. The uncanny valley phenomenon, typically used to describe the discomfort evoked by humanoid robots or digital avatars that are almost, but not quite, human, is particularly potent when the replica is of oneself. Familiarity of one's own image combined with its alien and unexpected presence as a separate entity can be profoundly disorienting. In some cases, this can escalate to doppelganger phobia, a specific fear related to the perceived threat of exploitation, displacement, or harm by one's double, especially in the context of modern AI-generated clones. Beyond immediate fear, such experiences can lead to significant cognitive dissonance. The individual is confronted with an event that starkly conflicts with their established understanding of reality and the nature of selfhood. This dissonance can be difficult to resolve and may lead to feelings of isolation, particularly if the individual fears ridicule or disbelief from others. The perceived shame or stigma associated with reporting such impossible experiences can prevent individuals from seeking support or sharing their accounts, further compounding their distress. Impact on self-perception, identity, and sense of reality. The appearance of a double strikes at the very core of an individual's sense of identity. The doppelganger, by its very existence, poses an implicit or explicit threat to the uniqueness and integrity of the self. Fyodor Dostoevsky's character Golyadkin in The Double exclaims to his doppelganger, "Either you or I, but both together is out of the question." 8. Perfectly encapsulating this existential challenge to a singular identity. The presence of an indistinguishable other self can lead to a profound identity crisis, forcing the individual to question who they truly are. This can manifest as identity fragmentation, where the normally cohesive self-perception is shattered or called into question. If a double can share one's appearance and potentially one's thoughts or memories, as in some folkloric accounts or delusional syndromes, the boundaries of the self become alarmingly porous. Encounters can also significantly blur the line between perceived reality and delusion. This is especially true if the double is perceived to possess independent agency, to know things the individual does not consciously know, or to act in ways that impact the individual's life. the struggle to determine whether the experience is real or a product of one's own mind can be a source of considerable psychological turmoil, connection to stress, trauma, and significant life changes. There's a notable correlation between the reporting of doppelganger experiences, including out-of-body experiences, and periods of significant psychological stress, emotional upheaval, trauma, or major life transitions. BEs, for instance, have been theorized as stress reactions to painful situations or as defense mechanisms against overwhelming threats. Similarly, folkloric accounts often describe doppelganger appearances during times of crisis or as presaging death, a period of ultimate transition and existential stress. This connection suggests that heightened psychological vulnerability or intense emotional states might lower the threshold for such anomalous perceptual experiences, or at the very least, influence how they are interpreted and the meaning ascribed to them. Stress may act as a catalyst or a significant modulating factor, potentially creating a feedback loop where the stress induces the experience, and the unsettling nature of the experience itself generates further stress and confusion about one's identity and sanity. Modern interpretations. Digital doppelgangers and their psychological effects. The age-old motif of the doppelganger has found a new and technologically advanced expression in the form of digital doppelgangers, AI-generated replicas of individuals. The creation and interaction with these digital selves are already provoking profound questions about identity, consent, authenticity, and the psychological effects of encountering AI versions of ourselves or others. Concerns identified include identity fragmentation, as discussed above, doppelganger phobia, the fear of digital clones being used for exploitation or displacing the original individual, and complex issues surrounding living memories, such as the emotional impact of interacting with an AI clone of a known person, living or deceased, which risks misrepresenting the individual or fostering unhealthy attachments. These interactions with sophisticated simulations compel individuals to confront their own identity and the meaning of selfhood in an era where technology can convincingly blur the boundaries between the real and the artificial, the original and the copy. This modern iteration of the double brings novel ethical and psychological challenges, forcing a reevaluation of what constitutes authenticity and selfhood in a technologically mediated world. Profound unease, typically associated with seeing a double, whether folkloric or digital, stems from the inherently uncanny nature of the experience, the familiar rendered strange and unsettlingly alien. When the other that is encountered is a replica of oneself, this effect is dramatically magnified as it challenges fundamental assumptions about self-unity, uniqueness, and the stability of one's own being. This psychological impact reveals a deep human need for a coherent and unique sense of self. Any perceived threat to this stability, even if originating from a mere image, hallucination, or digital simulation, can trigger significant emotional and existential distress. Furthermore, both folkloric traditions and some psychological interpretations converge on the idea that the double, however it is perceived, can act as a carrier of unwelcome truths, repressed thoughts, or messages that the conscious mind is resistant to acknowledging. Folkloric doubles sometimes offer advice, albeit often malicious, or reveal hidden knowledge. Psychoanalytically, the double can represent repressed emotions, forbidden desires, or the shadow aspect of the personality. This suggests that the double, in a symbolic sense, might function as a conduit for subconscious or otherwise unacknowledged information. From a therapeutic standpoint, exploring the perceived message or nature of a double, whether it is viewed as an internal projection or an external entity, could offer a pathway to understanding repressed aspects of the self, unresolved internal conflicts, or unaddressed existential anxieties. Theories. Explaining the spirit double phenomenon, the enduring and widespread nature of spirit double experiences has prompted numerous attempts at explanation, ranging from psychoanalytic interpretations of the inner self to cognitive and neuropsychological models focusing on brain function and perception. These theories endeavor to make sense of how and why individuals might come to believe in or experience a second self. Psychoanalytical theories. Psychoanalytical thought has offered rich, symbolic interpretations of the doppelganger phenomenon, often linking it to deep-seated internal psychological dynamics, unconscious conflicts, and the complex processes of identity formation. One prominent view sees the double as a projection of unconscious aspects of the self. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the repressed, darker, or unacknowledged parts of the personality, is often invoked, with the doppelganger seen as an externalized manifestation of this shadow. In Vladimir Nabokov's novel Despair, the protagonist Hermann is interpreted as projecting his unconscious desires, ambitions, and fears onto Felix, the man he deludedly perceives as his perfect double. This projection allows Hermann to enact, or attempt to enact, forbidden impulses through the imagined agency of his double. The doppelganger motif is also frequently explored in relation to a fragmented self and identity crisis. The appearance of a double can signify a split within the psyche, where different, often conflicting aspects of the personality are experienced as separate entities. This can lead to an intense struggle for a cohesive and stable sense of identity. Such crises may be linked to narcissistic tensions, where the double represents an idealized or devalued self-image, or to a failure to integrate various aspects of the personality into a unified whole. Jacques Lacan's theories, particularly the concept of the mirror stage, where the infant forms an ego through identification with an external image of itself, have been used to suggest that the doppelganger struggle relates to the inherent self-alienation involved in the process of becoming a subject and achieving a social identity. The double, in this light, can represent a pathological fixation or regression related to these early developmental challenges. Furthermore, the experience of a double, or the development of a dual personality, can be understood as a form of dissociation or defense mechanism. Dissociation involves a disruption in the normally integrated functions of consciousness, memory, identity, or perception of the environment. In the face of overwhelming trauma, stress, or an unbearable reality, the psyche might split off parts of experience or identity as a way to cope. Creation of a second self could serve as a means to escape a distressing world, to compartmentalize traumatic memories, or to disown unacceptable impulses. Similarly, out-of-body experiences, OBEs, which share some phenomenological overlap with seeing a double, have been proposed by some psychologists as defense mechanisms designed to deal with the existential threat of death, allowing for an imaginal confirmation of the quest for immortality. Cognitive and neuropsychological theories. Cognitive and neuropsychological approaches seek to explain experiences of seeing a double by examining the underlying brain functions, perceptual processes, and cognitive mechanisms. As discussed in Section 4B, body image distortion and errors in self-processing are central to many neurological explanations of autoscopic phenomena. The brain, particularly regions like the temporoparietal junction, TPJ, constantly integrates multisensory information to create our sense of embodiment and self-location. Errors in this integration due to neurological conditions like epilepsy or lesions, specific brain stimulation, or even extreme physiological states can lead to the various forms of autoscopy, including heautoscopy, where a double is perceived. Out-of-body experiences are similarly linked to distortions of the body image and the perceived location of the self relative to the physical body. Some theories propose that OBEs and related experiences of a double are essentially hallucinatory fantasies, constructed from memory, imagination, and occur within altered states of consciousness. This perspective often draws parallels with dreaming or lucid dreaming. Psychologist Susan Blackmore, for example, developed a cognitive map hypothesis, suggesting that during an OBE, the individual constructs a model or map of the world from memory and imagination, and then experiences this constructed model as if it were a direct perception from an out-of-body perspective. This view posits that the vividness and perceived reality of the experience stem from the power of these internal cognitive processes rather than an actual separation of consciousness from the body. The personality trait of fantasy proneness has also been investigated in relation to these experiences. Research has indicated that individuals who report having had OBEs tend to score higher on measures of fantasy proneness than those who have not. This suggests that a heightened capacity for vivid imagination, absorption in inner experience, and a blurring of the lines between fantasy and reality might predispose certain individuals to interpret ambiguous perceptual cues or internal states as an OBE or the presence of a double. An alternative, though less mainstream, theory is the spiritual monistic theory proposed by Alistair McIntosh. This framework attempts to bridge the gap between purely psychological or materialistic explanations and more traditional astral projection theories. McIntosh posits that spirit, conceived as a universal consciousness akin to Brahman or Tao, is the only true reality, and the physical universe is fundamentally a mental construct within the spirit. In this view, an OBE is not merely an internal psychological construct or a hallucination, but involves a genuine projection of individualized consciousness, Atma, within this larger spiritual mental reality. While still speculative, this theory highlights the ongoing effort to find explanatory frameworks that can accommodate both the neurological correlates and the profound subjective sense of reality often reported in these experiences. These diverse theories, from the depths of psychoanalysis to the intricacies of brain function, illustrate the multifaceted attempts to understand the phenomenon, the spirit double. A central tension often revolves around whether the double is primarily an internal projection or construct, a product of unconscious conflicts, cognitive errors, or imaginative processes, or whether it involves the perception of something external or a different state of being. McIntosh's spiritual monism, for example, explicitly tries to synthesize these internal and external perspectives by proposing a fundamentally mental or spiritual reality in which such projections of consciousness could occur. This debate mirrors broader philosophical inquiries into the nature of consciousness itself. Is what we perceive generated solely by our individual minds and brains? Can consciousness interact with or perceive phenomena that extend beyond the immediate physical organism? Many theories, particularly those rooted in psychoanalysis, link the emergence of the doppelganger motif in literature and potentially in subjective experience to critical stages, stresses, or failures in the process of identity formation and socialization. For instance, Lacanian interpretations connect the doppelganger to unresolved issues stemming from the mirror stage, where the self is first constituted through identification with an external image, or the Oedipal stage, where unacceptable aspects of the self must be othered or repressed. Failures or extreme stresses in these fundamental processes of identification and differentiation can, according to these theories, manifest as anxieties about or experiences of a double. This suggests that the doppelganger as a concept can be a powerful metaphor for, or even a psychological manifestation of, the inherent struggles and vulnerabilities involved in becoming a coherent, socialized self. Finally, a critical consideration in evaluating these theories is the gap between their explanatory power regarding potential mechanisms and the subjective reality and profound personal meaning these experiences often hold for individuals. While scientific theories can elucidate how autoscopic hallucinations might occur due to TPJ dysfunction or how delusions might form, they may not fully capture the phenomenological richness, the perceived agency of the double, the specific content of the experience, or the sense that it conveys information not consciously known by the individual. As noted, OBEs can have strong emotional accompaniment and significance. This experiential dimension often resists complete reduction to purely neurological or cognitive explanations, suggesting that a comprehensive understanding requires an approach that acknowledges both the underlying mechanisms and the deeply personal impact and interpretation of these extraordinary human experiences. Controversies, debates, and interpretive frameworks. The phenomenon of the spirit double, straddling the realms of folklore, psychology, and neuroscience, is fraught with controversies and interpretive debates. These discussions often revolve around the fundamental nature of such experiences. Are they objective encounters with external entities, subjective psychological events, or neurologically induced perceptions? A primary and persistent tension exists between folkloric/supernatural explanations, scientific/psychological interpretations. Traditional beliefs, as explored earlier, often posit spirit doubles as actual external entities, omens, spiritual counterparts, or independent beings. In stark contrast, scientific approaches tend to view these experiences as products of brain function, g. autoscopy due to TPJ dysfunction, psychological states, e.g. dissociation psychosis, or misinterpretations of ordinary phenomena. A case study where an individual, Mr. X, experiencing a delusion of a double, ultimately killed the person he misidentified, starkly illustrates the dangerous potential when a folkloric concept like the doppelganger intersects with severe psychosis. The challenge lies in reconciling these vastly different epistemologies, one rooted in cultural tradition and belief, the other in empirical investigation and material explanation. Within the scientific and psychological communities themselves, there are ongoing debates regarding the validity and interpretation of autoscopic and astral experiences. A key question is whether out-of-body experiences, OBEs, or astral projection represent genuine journeys of consciousness outside the physical body, or if they are more parsimoniously explained as forms of lucid dreaming, complex hallucinations, or specific neurological events. Some researchers emphasize studies where electrical stimulation of certain brain regions, particularly the TPJ, has induced OBE-like sensations, suggesting a primarily neurological basis for these experiences. Even the definition of autoscopy is subject to debate. Faget's more restrictive definition required the individual to retain insight into the unreality of the perceived double, a criterion not met in many cases, particularly those involving psychosis. This has led others, like Damas Mora et al., to propose a less restrictive definition, simply as the experience of duplication of one's real self, without further qualification. 3. Which better accommodates the range of clinical presentations. The sheer diversity of double experiences also poses a significant challenge for definition and categorization. The term doppelganger itself has become somewhat amorphous in popular usage. Reported experiences range from fleeting visual hallucinations of a mirrored self to persistent and deeply held delusional beliefs in an independent double. From seeing an exact physical replica to merely feeling an unseen presence. The classification of autoscopic phenomena into 6 distinct types: autoscopic hallucination, heautoscopy, feeling of a presence, OBE, negative heautoscopy, and inner autoscopy, represents an attempt to bring phenomenological order to the spectrum. However, the profoundly subjective nature of these experiences makes strict, universally applicable categorization inherently difficult. The psychological impact of believing in malevolent supernatural entities also contributes to the complexity of interpreting spirit double phenomena. Research indicates that a strong belief in demons and evil spirits is correlated with poorer mental health outcomes, particularly concerning social and interpersonal well-being. These findings can be plausibly extrapolated to the potential negative psychological impact of believing in a malevolent spirit double or fetch, which, as seen in many folkloric traditions, often carries connotations of harm, misfortune, or death. This raises critical questions about causality. Does the belief itself contribute to psychological distress, or does pre-existing distress or vulnerability make an individual more susceptible to adopting or experiencing such beliefs? The fear and anxiety associated with the idea of a harmful supernatural counterpart could certainly exacerbate underlying mental health issues or contribute to a heightened state vigilance and paranoia. Finally, the role of cultural frameworks in shaping both the experience and interpretation of double phenomena cannot be overstated. A prevailing cultural belief in spirit doubles can provide a readily available narrative structure for individuals to make sense of unusual perceptual, cognitive, or psychological experiences. What one culture might identify and label as a Vardjager, a premonitory spiritual predecessor, another lacking that specific folkloric category might interpret as a symptom of anxiety, a neurological anomaly, a product of stress, or simply a strange coincidence. This does not necessarily invalidate the raw subjective experience itself, but underscores the powerful influence of the cultural lens through which it is perceived, understood, and given meaning. The interpretation of an anomalous event, be it a fleeting visual distortion, a strong sense of an unseen presence or a complex hallucinatory experience, is profoundly shaped by pre-existing cultural narratives and personal belief systems. What is identified as a double-goer in one cultural context might be categorized as a hypnagogic hallucination or a symptom of temporal lobe epilepsy in a modern clinical setting. This highlights the intricate interplay between raw sensory or perceptual data and the top-down cognitive and cultural processes of interpretation that shape what an individual ultimately experiences and how they make sense of it. It also underscores the inherent difficulty in definitively separating the objective phenomenon, if such a thing can be isolated, from its subjective interpretation. Regardless of the ontological status attributed to a doppelganger, whether it is considered a real external entity, a psychological projection, or a neurological artifact, the psychological impact on the individual experiencing it can be undeniably profound and genuinely distressing. The case of homicide linked to a doppelganger delusion 3, fear and cognitive dissonance reported by those who feel they've encountered a double seven, and the correlation between belief in malevolent entities and poorer mental health all attest to this. The source of the belief or experience, whether folkloric, psychotic, or neurological, may differ, but the potential for significant negative psychological outcomes is a common thread. For clinicians, researchers, and indeed anyone seeking to understand these phenomena, addressing the subjective reality and the distress caused by these experiences is paramount, irrespective of one's ultimate stance on their truth or origin. Furthermore, the concept of the double is not static. It evolves with cultural and technological advancements. The emergence of digital doppelgangers, AI-generated simulations of individuals, represents a new and rapidly developing frontier for this ancient motif. This technological iteration brings with it a host of novel controversies and concerns surrounding identity, consent, authenticity, and psychological well-being that are distinct from, yet resonate deeply with, older folkloric and psychological anxieties about duplication and the self. Future debates will increasingly need to incorporate the complex implications of artificial intelligence and virtual realities for our understanding and experience of self and other, demonstrating the enduring relevance and adaptability of the doppelganger concept. Conclusion: the enduring enigma of the self and its shadow. The journey through the multifaceted world of spirit doubles, from the sacred spiritual counterparts of ancient Egypt, like the Ka and Ba, to the often feared folkloric doppelganger of German legend, premonitory Norse double-goer, the emotion-driven Japanese Ikirio, and the internal guiding Yoruba Ori-Inu, reveals a concept as diverse as human culture itself. Scientific and psychological inquiry has further complicated this landscape, reframing many experiences once attributed to external spirits through the lens of autoscopic phenomena, temporoparietal junction dysfunction, dissociative states, and specific psychological syndromes. These modern frameworks offer alternative, often neurologically grounded explanations for the experience of seeing or sensing a double. However, a persistent gap often remains between these material explanations, which can elucidate potential mechanisms and the rich phenomenological content, subjective meaning, and profound cultural resonance that these experiences hold for individuals and societies. The dialogue between these perspectives, folkloric, psychological, and neurological, is ongoing and essential for comprehensive understanding. The remarkable persistence of the double motif across disparate cultures and throughout recorded history, now extending into the realm of digital replicas, suggests that it touches upon fundamental and enduring aspects of human consciousness. It speaks to our innate curiosity and perennial anxieties about the nature of selfhood, the boundaries of identity, mystery of mortality, and our attempts to grapple with phenomena that challenge the apparent solidity of everyday reality. This enduring presence indicates that the core questions raised by the concept of the double, questions about what constitutes a unique individual, the relationship between mind and body, and the nature of perceived reality, remain profoundly relevant. The study of spirit doubles, in all its varied manifestations, offers a unique and valuable lens through which to examine how human beings construct their sense of self, how cultural narratives shape perception and interpretation, and how belief systems mediate the understanding of anomalous or extraordinary experiences. It highlights the brain's astonishing capacity to generate complex experiences of self and other. And it underscores the deep-seated human psychological need to create meaning and coherence out of these experiences, whether through mythological storytelling or scientific theorizing. Potential avenues for future interdisciplinary research are abundant and compelling. Further investigations that integrate advanced neuroimaging techniques, such as fMRI during induced autoscopic states, detailed phenomenological studies, capturing the rich subjective qualities of these experiences, and rigorous cross-cultural analysis could significantly deepen our understanding of both the universal and culturally specific aspects of the double phenomenon. The rapidly emerging field of digital doubles and AI-generated personas presents a critical new area for research, particularly concerning their psychological impact on identity, social interaction, and well-being. Moreover, exploring the potential therapeutic applications of understanding double experiences, especially in contexts of dissociation, identity confusion, trauma, or psychosis, could yield valuable clinical insights. In conclusion, the spirit double, whether conceived as a tangible folkloric entity, a neurological aberration, a profound psychological projection, or an emergent property of complex systems, remains a powerful and enigmatic symbol. It reflects the inherent complexities of human selfhood, the mysteries of consciousness, and our unending quest to understand the self and its often elusive shadow. The double continues to challenge, provoke, and fascinate, ensuring its place as an enduring enigma at the intersection of culture, mind, and experience. The evolution in how doubles are understood, from externalized spirits in ancient cultures to internalized psychological processes with the rise of depth psychology, to brain-based neurological events in contemporary neuroscience, and now to technologically constructed digital entities, mirrors humanity's broader, evolving comprehension of consciousness, the brain, and the very fabric of identity. This progression demonstrates that the concept of the spirit double is not a static relic of the past, but a dynamic and adaptable idea that continues to reflect and respond to the dominant epistemic frameworks of different eras. Despite significant scientific advancements in understanding the neurological and psychological mechanisms that might underlie some experiences of a double, the deeply personal, often transformative, and sometimes seemingly paranormal nature of certain accounts, particularly those involving perceived external agency or the acquisition of otherwise unknown information, continues to challenge purely materialistic or reductionist explanations of consciousness. This persistent explanatory gap ensures that the enigma of the double remains alive, fueling ongoing debate and wonder. The study of spirit doubles will therefore likely continue to reside at the fascinating and productive intersection of science, psychology, philosophy, and cultural studies, constantly pushing the boundaries of our understanding of what it means to be a self in a complex and often mysterious world.